So, since the German elections, of course, the fox is in the hen house again. However, it would be completely mischaracterizing what this fox is, because the fox is not Nigel Farage in the Conservative hen house. It is Ed Davey. Ed Davey is the fox in the hen house stealing all those Conservative voters. It's not Reform. Last week, there were 5 by-elections. How many of those 5 by-elections did Reform UK win? 0. 0. We are approaching almost 200 by-elections since the last general election. Right? Almost 200. In fact, we may have passed that by now. How many of those by-elections have Reform won? They've won 7. And yet, I'm constantly told, oh, we need to worry about Reform. We need to worry about Reform. I can understand the right doing it, because it's funny, because they completely misunderstand that. We know why. we've covered enough articles on Conservative Home for you to all understand why that's the case. But it always baffles me when it's someone on the left claiming that, because in the run-up to the last general election, and you look at the by-election results for that, we could see what was going to happen at the next general election. Now, it's true, the next general election is, 4 or 5 years away. And yet people are already making predictions about it. But if Reform UK are as popular as people claim, why then is it not turning into electoral success? Surely that's what we would be seeing. But that is not what we are seeing from the by-elections. And instead, as I have told you guys time and time and time again, the party that are going to probably win quite a lot of seats and do very well at the upcoming May elections is going to be the Lib Dems. Very well indeed. So it's really heartening to see, yesterday, I believe this was, John Harris come out and say this exact same thing in The Guardian, saying, why is Kemi Badenoch, why are all these Conservatives so worried about Reform when it's Ed Davey who is stealing all those voters from you? Why are you not worried about the Lib Dems? So, oh dear me. So we are going to have a look at that today as well. But before we do go getting into that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, the One Foundation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. Oh, by the way, should you ever get a Conservative knocking on your door in the next couple of weeks, or in the run up to an election near you, if you want to put the fear of God into them, don't say you're voting for Reform, say you're voting Lib Dem. That would put the fear of God in them far more than saying you're voting for Reform. Like I say, I've been noticing on Conservative Home, there are a couple of people in the comments, no one's said it yet or done an article about it, but if you look at the comments, it's people down there that are saying, why are we worrying about Reform so much? It's the Lib Dems we need to be worried about. And I think it's because they're coming up to these upcoming elections, or these local elections, and they're starting to do some campaigning, and they're starting to realize, there's all these Lib Dem supporters all of a sudden. Where have they all come from? Anyway, so we're going to crack on then into this. So it's the Kemi delusion. The more the Tories run towards Reform, the more their voters will run towards the Lib Dems. This is exactly what I've been saying so many times. What times these are. As Donald Trump now sells out Ukraine and to gain peace, there are no reports that Keir Starmer will now flatter the president by trying to invite him to address Parliament. Meanwhile, Trump's British admirers tried to continue to offer flimsy excuses and unmitigated admiration. Before Trump paid tribute to Nigel Farage, the great guy, his address to the Conservative Political Action Conference gathering in Washington, the MP in Clacton used his time to say at that event to hail the Trump's progress with Vladimir Putin and salute him as simply the bravest man I know. By way of bathos and deliberately ridiculous, Liz Truss had then been told to a much smaller crowd that the country she ran just for a month is now failing and needs its now own Trump insurgency. And yeah, like I say, you could make an entire political comedy show about Liz Truss's post premiership adventures. Like I say, get me a comedy writer and a pitch room to the BBC. We'll get it there. So, at the top of course, the party, Truss also briefly led. Kemi Badenoch cannot, of course, resolve a similar contradiction between now being dazzled by liking Trump's of ideology and the political inconvenience of what that actually means in practice. Late last week, she parroted the obligatory half-assed rebuttal of Trump's attacks on the Ukraine president, saying President Zelensky is not a dictator, she said, as if that was a revelation. But any observer of her recent engagements will know that where her heart obviously really lies. Badenoch epitomizes the absolute absurdity now gripping a huge chunk of the British right, as now the issues warnings about the corpse of the Western civilization while cozying up to people now hell-bent on pulling the roof on just about every basic tenet of liberal democracy. Along now with all the remains of the transatlantic basis of international security, she and her allies' now understanding of such basic contradictions is about as thorough as her weekly preparation for parliamentary ministers' questions. But this hardly now diminishes her belief in a cultish, paranoia set of beliefs, so it all comes now out on a weekly basis. And yeah, this is part of the stuff I don't understand. Like, why is she cozying up so much to Trump? You know, the last Trump presidency, you could look at British polls, and British voters did not like Trump. Like, they did not like any cozying up by the Conservative parties or MPs cozying up to Trump. Like, it was seen as like anathema. Like, do not cozy up to Trump because it's bad for your image. It's bad for your outlook. And yet now they're all cozying up to him as if he's about to, well, should we say he's offering them around the back of the bike shed? Literally, it seems what it's like, to be honest. Anyway, last week, she found time in her diary for now a turn at the annual conference of the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, the international initiative co-founded by the great modern sage Jordan Peterson. Take a look at President Trump, she told her audience. He has shown that sometimes you need the first stint in government to spot the problems, but it's the second time around where you really know how to fix them. And then it starts by telling the truth. This is someone who has been in Parliament for quite a long time and quite along there on 14 years of government. You didn't have time to, spot all those problems. Anyway, her chosen varieties are, of course, the same as ever. The insistence that an intellectual elite is now controlling everything, along with warnings that the poisoning of the media is happening now even in higher education, and that left-wing progressivism, whether it's pronouns or even DEI or even climate activism. At that very same moment, she was asked about Elon Musk and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency, saying, "I don't think Doge is radical enough," she said. Well, like I say, Doge does so much stuff. I mean, if I wanted to, I could just turn this entire channel into just covering the stuff that Doge does, because there's something new every day, multiple times, you could cover stories about what's going on in Doge and like the havoc that they are causing in the UK and not in the US government. And as I keep on saying, it's all going to end badly. All going to end badly sooner or later for Doge. Something like monumentally bad is going to happen. At least at Twitter, it just meant that, Twitter was down for a day, or that they couldn't get back into the office because they sacked all the security guards. You don't have to worry about an entire government falling to pieces. When he took over Twitter and did the exact same thing there. And gee, look how well it turned out for Twitter. Anyway, so who is all this stuff for? If her aim is to stop the Reform UK insurgency, she is speaking in now far too abstract and pointy-headed a vocabulary. The problem made is now far worse by the lack of frontline Tory politicians who can actually compete with Farage's regular bloke afflictions. But there is another contradiction missing. The plain fact now that is now gleefully resident in a hard right echo chamber is now guaranteed to now further alienate millions of voters that the Tories have lost. As I read reports of Badenoch's speech, I found myself thinking of the Woking, a quiet corner in Surrey, the consumer belt, that is now the epitome of a sea of change that Badenoch, along with most of her party, has now chosen to ignore. Last summer, the Liberal Democrats took that constituency from the Conservatives on a 19% swing. Like I say, you look at all these individual winners, all these wins that the Lib Dems got, though some of them were very big swings indeed. So some of that shift was down to the spectacular bankruptcy of the Borough Council, thanks to now reckless decisions taken by the Tory administration. But the result was now keeping in line with a huge pile of Lib Dem games that rippled through the home countries and beyond, yet received a lot less attention than the 5 seats won by Reform. As I keep on bringing this up time and time again, the Lib Dems did so well, took all these seats, and are now, I think, as Ed Davey said, his goal is not to win the next election, it's to become the main party of opposition. I keep on saying this, depending how he plays his cards over the next couple of years, he could very well do that. He could very, very well do that. I think he's positioned the party in such a way that he could do it. And that will be a massive change in politics. Because if the Conservatives are removed from being the main party of opposition, they lose a lot of power. They lose a lot of power. And in come the Lib Dems. Very different party, very different way of doing things, very different way of politics. Our politics will change because of that. It will be a very, very big moment for that. So back to this. They obviously still read like the Tory litany of woe. Guildford, Surrey Heath, Bicester, Woodstock, Horsham, Cotswold, South, Carlshon, Wallington, Tunbridge Wells, scores of Lib Dem games, which all came after a Tory collapse in local government. And it was not hard to work out why. Many of them, with majority voters, had backed Remain in the 2016 referendum. The subsequent Tory embrace of the hard Brexit left them reeling, and Boris Johnson's amoral stance of leadership only furthered their quiet despair. But there was something much deeper afoot in these places. And this is why I absolutely love, I can't remember his name now. John Harris, sorry. Had a brain fart there, bro. He's so good because he goes out. He goes and he talks to these places. He's done so many videos where he goes out and he talks to these places and really sort of digs in and tries to get to the root of what's going on in these places, like the change that has gone on. And he's so good at doing it. So these parts of England are assuredly modern. often more ethically diverse than they used to be, and they're often not quite as affluent as their reputation suggests. But they are still full of people who are mindful of the health of the economy. These voters would be in the market for a center right party that emphasized the wonders of prosperity of ownership and lower taxes and pledged to back of the business interests. But but what they do find repellent, in my experience, is the Tory turn into fascism and the sense that Farage and now Trump are now pulling the strings. As I keep on saying, the more they go into that direction, the more they try to outflank Farage, because all Farage just has to do, oh, you've outflanked me. Oh, well, I'll just move him further right. I'll just even move further right. And that's all he does. And then, like I say, he has succeeded in pulling the Tory party to a very right-wing stance, a very right-wing stance. And this has repelled a lot of voters, a lot of the centre right-wing voters. And they are going elsewhere. And as I often say, if you look at the map of what people think they are you left, right, are you centrist? The only growing group is the centrists. And I'll be very interested to see what that result is the next time that type of thing gets done again, because last time the only group to grow was the centrists, going from 30 to 35. The last one was done in 2019, I think it was. So we'll see if another one gets done anytime soon, but very interesting indeed. So, needless to say, they do not get on their commuter trains every morning and chat animatedly about such hard right talking points as cultural Marxism. Being trapped in the 15-minute cities and needing to have more kids to preserve the Judeo Christian culture, in my experience, almost nobody in Britain does. And he's right. I've brought this up before. This whole turn into like the culture war stuff, this has tempted to bring all those culture war arguments of, cultural Marxism, these 15-minute cities. You need to, quote, save the West or the West is dying. No one talks like that. He's right. No one talks like that in Britain. It doesn't and has never translated well. The culture wars has never translated well over to UK politics. And yet Badenoch is obsessed with trying to make this work. So too is Nigel Farage to a certain point. Except he's a bit more British when he does it in his way of talking about it. Still doesn't obviously sell too many things because, again, otherwise he'd be a lot more popular and probably winning a lot more seats. Like I say, almost 200 by-elections, hasn't even got into double digits. So, as Badenoch now blithely follows this bright light of hard right politics, what is her offer to these voters? I know this with certainty, that they do not look at the chaos and disorder gripping the US and Trump's torching of international norms as something to emulate. They feel a mounting anxiety. In the past, the part of the British genius of British conservatism lay in the way to respond to times of such turbulence by offering the balm of tradition and the idea that these old institutions and conventions would endure. Now Badenoch and her ilk now want to joyously throw them into the fire. And that's part, I think, the reason why this has not succeeded. Because that's what the Conservative Party used to do. They are like, we are traditionalists, we have these institutions work, we should always put our faith in them, and yet they're not. You've got Badenoch, and we've seen this attempt to try and politicize the civil service. That didn't go down well at all. You never see those talking points brought up. It's been a while since we've heard them, but you don't hear them because they know that talking point did not go down well. Because why? The civil service is one of our big cherished institutions that we trust and that we know we should support. And by one of those things we should support it is by not politicizing it. And yet, what did the Conservatives try and do for some time? They tried to politicize it. Do you think Badenoch now creating a Doge department with who's in charge of it? Are we gonna hire Elon Musk. Oh, that's going to go down like a house of cards. All these ideas are not popular, but for some reason, Badenoch seems to think they are. That she follows this hard right route. Oh, we're going to be rewarded. The electoral prospects of both Reform and the Conservatives don't seem to be very good. Anyway, her choice of engagements is, of course, a very small part of that same wretched picture. Last week, she did an interview with Peterson in which she talked about the party that has now gobbled up so many old Tory heartlands and is now trying to make a point of constantly attacking Trump. The Lib Dems, she said, have, quote, silly and foolish ideas. But the other things she blurted out were now much more revealing, saying they don't have much of an ideology other than being nice, she went on, as if niceness was a way to be avoided. A typical Liberal Democrat will be somebody who is good at fixing their church roof, and the people like in the community like them, like they are. Fix the church roof, and you should be a member of parliament. And at one time, if you really look at that, that is such a bizarre thing for someone in the Conservative Party to be saying. Such a bizarre thing, because you would think that, going to fix a church roof, being part of your community, getting involved in community action, being involved in those institutions in your local area was like a big conservative thing and value. And yet, right there, you have the leader of the Conservative Party throwing that away. Anyway, let's finish this off. Didn't those people used to be conservatives? Exactly right. And if they have walked away, Badenoch is now accelerating this turn into second-hand Trumpism is not going to pull them back. Large parts of what used to be called Middle England, in fact, now surely look at the party that once confidently spoke for them and now recoil. This is the Tory crisis that yet another leader shows no signs of understanding. Yep. And that picture sums it up perfectly. The hen is crowing at the magpie who has stolen one egg. Meanwhile, the Lib Dem fox steals the rest of the eggs and gets away with it. I keep on telling people over and over again, and I will keep on saying it on this channel because it is true. If Reform UK are so popular, why haven't they won more by-elections? Why are the Tories so terrified of a party that won 5 seats when another party won a lot more seats directly from them? I'll keep on saying this. I am not worried about Reform because when you look at the data, when you look at the actual electoral results, Reform UK aren't that impressive. Reform UK are just not that impressive. And yet people spend days, hours worrying about them. I'm not worried at all. I am not worried at all, quite frankly, because so far, the evidence that Nigel Farage is going to be the next UK Prime Minister is very, very scant indeed. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.